North Alabama School for Organizers presents Fireside Chats, intersectional education through interviews with the organizations and people making real change right now. Listen, learn, and organize with Nassau and Fireside Chats.
Democratic Party, but Chicano simply means child of this earth, child of this land. And why is that such a terrible, scary thing? Because if you're a child of this land, a child of this earth, if you're of this land, then how the hell can you be an illegal alien on this land? You can't. So I continue to use the term Chicano to remind not just myself, but others that we have a connection to this land, and it simply means to be of this land. You don't own the land, you don't claim the land as your own. And there wasn't none of that, and you don't tell people what to do with the land, like real estate, none like that. No, it's simply a spiritual connection and a genealogical, and really it runs through our DNA that we're connected to this land. So.
As a part of introduction, we're very pleased to have the representatives from the Brown Berets here and other organizations, and also honored to be interviewing Rafael Avita.
Avitya.
Avitya, okay. Not Vita. And so Rafael is with the Brown Berets, and what I'd usually do here is we want to kind of introduce ourselves, I guess, since we got just a few here. I'm Hy Thurman. I'm, sort of the co-director of the North Alabama School for Organizers, and one of the co-founders of the original Rainbow Coalition with the Young Patriots. And so I'm very pleased to be able to do these, these fireside chats. Okay, and I don't know, we may be getting too many on here to do introductions. So, you want to introduce yourself real quick? Anyone with the Brown Berets? Or
I'll introduce myself, just Rafael Avitya. I'm with the Fresno Autonomous Brown Berets, part of La Mesa Nacional de Brown Berets. Been a Brown Beret since 2008. And yes, I'll be speaking tonight.
Okay. Well, why don't we just get started, because it would take up too much introductions here, but because of our time limit. But Rafael, can you tell us a little bit about your history, your background, and how you got involved with the Brown Berets, and what the mission basically is of the Brown Berets?
Sure. I was born in Culiacan, Sinaloa, Mexico. So my family migrated to the United States in the 70s. We crossed the border, so I have firsthand experience of what it is to come to this country. And during this time when we lived in Southern California, which is specifically South Central at the time, Watts, Inglewood, we actually
You're muted, Rafael.
Yep, got it.
There you go. You got muted somehow.
Yeah, so I was saying, my family migrated to the United States, and we lived in South Central Los Angeles, and we grew up with the terror of, before it was ICE, it was La Migra, or the immigration services. I remember having to hide underneath our bed in our closets as little kids. There was 5 of us, my uncle, my dad, and my mom, and my dad saying, shh, don't say nothing, because the landlord had called the immigration on everybody. We lived there with Salvadoreños, people from El Salvador. There was immigrants from all over the world, or at least Central America, living in this one project ghetto ruined apartment. But they would collect the money, and then they would call immigration to deport us and then pocket that money. So double dipping, right? But I remember as a child having to hide and in fear that we'd be deported and we'd be arrested. So that was the first time I learned that there was something wrong. That although people said we're coming to the north to live a better life, I knew it wasn't all that great. We went on to move to the Central Valley, We lived in East LA prior to that, but then we moved to the Central Valley, to the Fresno area where I grew up, went to high school. And during this time, I didn't become a citizen until I was 12, but during this time, I continued to be involved with groups like MECHA, which is Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán, a group founded in the 60s during the Chicano movement. And the Chicanos who formed this organization basically was a student movement. So I was indoctrinated into what it meant to be a Chicano, to know what the land meant, what Aztlán meant. But I was only indoctrinated to the superficial level, because it wasn't until I got to college at Fresno State where Mecha really, I would say, informed me of what it meant to be a Chicano and have Chicana sisters and have a community that, although we were often, like I was, terrified to be afraid to be, be caught by immigration or by police for fear of deportation, I realized real quick that this land that many of us are referred to as being illegal to, we have a homeland, a connection to this land. This is a homeland that many people forget. Mexican and people from Central South America are in fact indigenous to this land, or tied to this land. And that's something I was never taught in high school, and it wasn't until I went to college. And even then I didn't learn it until, I met the right people. So the reason why, although I was born in Mexico, I was Mexicano by birth, I call myself a Chicano is because the term Chicano, unlike the term Latino or Hispanic or Mexican American, Chicano is a term that our community came up on our own, and it affirms that we are simply, not that we march as Cesar Chavez or that we're brown berets or that we're radicals out there protesting. No, Chicano simply means something very simple, and this is why it terrifies everybody from white supremacists to the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. But Chicano simply means child of this earth, child of this land. And why is that such a terrible, scary thing? Because if you're a child of this land, a child of this earth, if you're of this land, then how the hell can you be an illegal alien on this land? You can't. So I continue to use the term Chicano to remind not just myself, but others that we have a connection to this land, and it simply means to be of this land. You don't own the land, you don't claim the land as your own. And there wasn't none of that, and you don't tell people what to do with the land, like real estate, none like that. No, it's simply a spiritual connection and a genealogical, and really it runs through our DNA that we're connected to this land. So I went on to college as a mechista. I graduated. I did a lot of things while in college, but I found that after college, there wasn't an organization to really help to get involved with. I had a college degree now, and I was still radicalized from learning who I was. And I tried to look into the Brown Berets years prior, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. I'll be honest with you, everybody in the Brown Berets is learning their history. And one of the history we learn is that, our elders will tell us they made mistakes too. And that was one of the reasons I never joined the Brown Berets back in the 80s. And it wasn't until even in the 90s that I wouldn't join, because there were some things I just didn't agree with at the time. And it wasn't until later on I joined the Nation of Aztlán. We formed an organization based out here, Fresno, called the Nation of Aztlán, made up mainly of Native, Chicano youth and families. And we met consistently, and we were doing some awesome things, radical, spiritual, going to our Native American elders and learning from them. But then 9/11 happened, and after 9/11 occurs, they come after us. They start coming after all of us who are in leadership roles, especially those of us like myself who were leading the Nation of Aztlán. I personally was blamed for stealing explosives, which turned out to be a white young guy up in the hills here in Fresno who did that, not us. Law enforcement tried to blame us for a bunch of other things. And I remember it scared off a lot of people. After 9/11, many people got scared off. I don't blame some of these people, they were young to this organizing. But what I did learn is from our elders is that we have a connection with not just Chicanos and Chicanas, but AIM and our brothers in the American Indian movement. We have a connection with African brothers and sisters who came here from, who were brought here from Africa. And we have a connection with our Asian brothers and sisters, as well as our revolutionary white brothers and sisters. And that's something, an important lesson that I thought I should not lose. And after they disrupted the Nation of Aztlán, I went to law school. By the way, I'm a teacher. I have a master's degree in education, but then I decided to take a break. I'm gonna go to law school. If I'm gonna do anything, I'm gonna try to serve the communities with a little bit more knowledge. So while in law school, I was earning my degree, my doctorate in law, which is a doctorate, JD. Somebody came to me and said, hey, they're forming a local Brown Beret chapter in Fresno. We'd like you to join and come to this meeting and see if you're interested. And at first I was hesitant because I had already looked into the Brown Berets under current past leaderships. I just wasn't satisfied with that. But they said, no, it's autonomous Brown Berets. We're going to operate and we're going to serve with, with the people. We're going to adapt to the conditions we're living in today. I think you'll like it. So I went to a couple of meetings, and sure enough, it was exactly what I think was missing in a lot of our lives, those of us who wanted to do something, stay involved. And upon graduate, we started meeting, and the first year we didn't even wear a patch. We wore simply a beret. And upon graduation of law school, I was washing cars with the Brown Berets in Fresno to raise money for I forget what cause, and that was one of the best feelings I ever had, because I knew that although we here I was receiving one of the highest degrees, it was the Brown Berets for the community. Those degrees mean nothing. Those degrees mean absolutely nothing if you do nothing with it. So I knew that I was going to be putting my services to use with the Brown Berets and any other group or organization that we can connect with. And so we formed here in Fresno. The Brown Berets are to serve, observe, and protect. They formed in 1967 in East LA. The wore Brown Berets in honor of the Black Panthers, sure. But get this, the police gave them the name Brown Berets because they couldn't identify them. They didn't have a name. They actually went by a different name. It was Young Chicanos, and I forget what the rest of the acronym was, but the police actually started calling them Brown Berets, so they kept the name. The patches, as you'll see, the original patch was a little bit different than what I'm wearing. We have several patches today. So today, the Brown Beret organization is a loosely based a conglomerate of activists, Chicano, Chicanas all over the country. We have different patches at time, but the mission is the same: is to serve the people and to basically protect the people. And yeah, Willie from Houston reminds me, it's the Young Chicanos for Community Action is what the Brown Berets were originally called. And our elder, Carlos Montes, who's still with us today, he gives us great information. Becerra, who is another brother, Becerra, this brother is another great wealth of knowledge, and he's an elder that's still with us. So we, at Cinta Barajas, we have a lot of elders who are still out there teaching us and guiding us as our elders. And I'm just proud to say we have now chapters all over, and despite our patch, we have managed to finally create something called La Mesa Nacional de Brown Berets, which is now united so many chapters throughout the country, from North Carolina to Ohio, Chicago, all over, Texas, oh my gosh, Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, you name it, Colorado, we've got Brown Berets.
Wow, we could use one in Alabama.
I believe you may have some members out there. They just haven't organized under La Mesa. So yeah, you may have some people there.
Seems like we can do. Well, that's great. So the Chicano movement really kind of, actually it kind of started, do you think it started during the Mexican-American War? And that's when that's when people started identifying themselves as Chicanos?
The Mexican-American War, when they, after the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and this is something the Brown Berets have study groups, which we meet every Tuesday. Today actually will serve as our study group. And one of the things that we study is the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo of 1848. And after the US and Mexico went to war, they drew that imaginary line. They gave people less than 100 days to choose what side are you going to be on. Are you going to be Mexican, or are you going to be a Mexican living on the northern side of the border, which is now America? Therefore you're American. They forced Native American or Native tribes who were living in the border to choose at that time. And the term Chicano, which comes from the word Mexica, people don't realize the term Mexica is where the Mexica Alliance of Indigenous People of Mexico, they gathered, hundreds of years ago in Mexico under this name. That's where we get the term Mexicano or Mexicana, Mexica, which means people that oversee the land. Well, people were already using terms like this, and not all of them use these terms. But yeah, the Chicano movement, if you want to really go back, it starts when they laid down that border and it starts developing. It really kicks off, especially when they lay that border, and then you get later on some rebellions that happened under Pancho Villa. And one of the things that people don't realize is that Pancho Villa and Emiliano Zapata, they had fought in a revolution that the Russian Revolution took place as well, but the Mexican Revolution also took place, and they were influenced by a lot of leaders out there who talked revolution. And so the spirit of Chicanismo, or the spirit of being Chicana or Chicano, was already there, but the term especially took off in the 1930s and 40s with the Zoot Suit riots, and especially a lot of young Chicanos in places like El Paso, Texas, San Antonio, or Los Angeles, and places, and even in Chicago, where they were rebelling against the system. And for the first time, they were able to choose a term and widely publicize it, to say, this is who we are. Self-determination for ourselves means we recognize who we are. And that means calling ourselves not Hispanic, not Mexican American, but Chicano, and affirming that we have a connection to this land.
Oh, yeah, I have a friend who, actually, he didn't, his Mexican didn't associate too much with his people, until he and I went to college together, and he got involved in, the Chicano movement, and just a completely different person, sure of himself. And it was just great to see that, that change. But I think it was in Chicago, in 66 or 67, that the Brown Berets established a free clinic, I think.
They established a couple of free clinics, and one of the most popular was actually, they had one in Chicago. They had LA was one that was one of the most popular, and I got to give all credit to the women, because this never gets done. And only recently did I see somebody finally acknowledge this, that they established one in East LA. The main operations were carried out by a lot of the women in East LA and the surrounding areas. And the reason I mention that is because they often are left out. The mujeres of the movement are left out. And that's one thing I could say about today's generation of Brown Berets. I'm 53 years old, but there's a lot of young Brown Berets out there, and I say young because they're younger than me. But they acknowledge the importance of connecting with the true history. And when we bring up the clinics, when we bring up the camps where they're educating each other, or just the small little tutorial gatherings that may happen to educate our kids, it was always the women, always the women. And I can say one thing about the younger generation of Brown Berets today. They may be woke, but and people may want to take a shot at wokeness, but I'm not going to take a shot at wokeness, because the truth is they know what happened, and some of the credit that should have been given to our sisters, and to others, because without that, now that you bring up the clinics, and I'm so glad you do, because I've forgotten about this. History books are written, they're left out. And definitely, yeah, clinics were something that they established. They looked after and looked at other programs also to see what they were doing, and tried to go and do similar things, like the Pinto program, to help those who were incarcerated, coming out of prison. That program, I believe, is still around. The Pinto program was to help them, get back into society and adapt, and then do something as well with their lives, right? Because we often throw away our lumpkin, populations, and forget about them, and we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't do that.
Well, I'm going to have to agree with you there that the women were very, very important in the movement. With the Young Patriots, for instance, and the original Rainbow Coalition, because the women actually did most of the work in the clinics.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't get the recognition that they need. And one of the reasons I knew about that, the Chicago clinic with the Brown Berets is, the COINTELPRO came down on us pretty hard after the murder of Fred Hampton, and most of us had to go underground. So the women actually from another organization took over the clinic and continued that clinic, up into, the mid 70s.
Wow.
Because we weren't there, we couldn't do it, but they did, and they did all the work basically. And I'll always say that if you want to get something really done, you should ask a woman to do it. Men can do it, but women, they seem to have the drive that we don't have. But anyway, for someone to join the Brown Berets, what's the procedure? I take it you have male, you do have male and female, I know that, but Do you take different racial people in there, different classes?
Well, let me start out by saying people don't realize this, but especially me as being a history teacher and as a history teacher, I do a lot of research. And even before I was a teacher, I used to love to immerse myself in books. The Brown Berets didn't just start out with Chicanos or Mexican Americans living in East LA. Brown Berets actually included Puerto Ricans. I knew a Cuban here in Fresno who was part of the movement with the Brown Berets, and I didn't realize this until later on in life. Carlos Montes informed me of this. You had brothers and sisters who were half white. You had brothers and sisters who were black. Today, the Brown Berets is not exclusively an organization that's going to look at race. And that would actually be counterproductive to us as a people. If anything, we look at the spirit of the revolutionary and who it is. And the process is going to be different based on your locality. And the thing about La Mesa Nacional de Brown Berets, which I represent, and we have some members on here today who are part of La Mesa Nacional de Brown Berets, including Vida Ramirez, who is our chairperson, along with Lobo from Oregon. But La Mesa Nacional de Brown Berets, one of the things we do is we tell people, you run what your Brown Beret chapter as you feel should be run. It's your backyard. If you have certain criteria, certain rules, expectations, then we're going to trust that you know your people better than we do. I know in Fresno, for example, we have a year process where we observe somebody in their work in the community. We look at what they're doing, and we don't just hand out these berets and patches. We take it very serious, and we want to make sure that if you're going to receive a brown beret, you're going to be committed to the cause. And in some cases, after a year of service, and in good standing, the groups will vote. And in some cases, it has to be unanimous. In other cases, majority vote, however the locale decides. But if they give that beret, they're telling them this is, once you take this oath, you're saying that you're going to uphold this for the people, not for yourself. This isn't about you, right? It's not about us individually. It's about our community and the people. And if people continue to stay in good standing, then people always know you're going to be a brown beret. But the process, again, it depends on the locale, but generally speaking, they do have to accept some principles, including unity for Aztlán, which is something I'm not sure we're going to get into today, but Aztlán is the quote unquote mythical homeland of the Aztecs. It's written about a lot in books, but Aztlán is more than that. And one of the things we want to do is recognize that we do have a homeland here for many of us. We do look at this as part of our homeland, and we will defend the people within here. But Aztlán also runs beyond that. Just like a brown beret doesn't have to be necessarily Chicano, brown berets do have to have a commitment to Aztlán and the people of Aztlán, because we do want to promote self-determination, and it has to start with us.
Yeah, all right, excellent. Do you have like political education courses that people take that's required, or?
Yeah, well, there's two types of things that are going on right now with the Brown Berets. Number one, we have our own political education courses called Revolutionary Study Groups, which we conduct every Tuesday, 5 o'clock, and anybody who is a Brown Beret can join. I myself and my partner here who's on right now, named Rodrigo out of Houston. Rodrigo Villarreal is the other, I would say, instructor, and we go through readings. We read, we've been doing this since last year, but we go through serious readings, several types of readings where people know. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry about that, Coco. All right. Yeah, Coco's also one of our members out in Indiana. How you doing, Coco?
I'm doing well. I'm sorry.
It's all right. So yeah, we do have a political education class that we have, and a lot of our members are encouraged to read. And we've read everything from pieces from Mao, different things from Marx. We've read things from Zapata, I believe, in short terms. And then we've read other things that have been written by our scholars and historians who documented and have been documenting, the history. Because we want to make sure when we say revolutionary, we're not talking reformism. We're talking, revolutionary talk. And we're teaching our brown berets what it means to be revolutionary, right? It's not just the word you're going to use lightly. It's like Malcolm X said, you gotta know what you're talking about if you use that word. So basically that happens on Tuesdays. Now, On the other national level, both of them happen on the national level. We have what's called La Raza Unida Party, which was also a political organization that formed in the 1960s and 70s. It really was strong in Texas and in California and other parts of the country. But La Raza Unida spread so far as to Chicago, Michigan, and all over the country at one point, and was running candidates. But the purpose of La Raza Unida was including to push things like we were pushing self-determination, defending our community, representing our community. Like the Brown Berets, like Mecha, like a lot of the United Farm Workers, a lot of Chicana-based organizations, even the Mexican American Political Association, a lot of these organizations went away for a while, or they didn't disappear. I would never say that, but they were infiltrated, including La Raza Unida, by FBI, by informers with the police department. And La Raza Unida backed up for a while. And what has happened in the recent years is they come back. We've come back, I say, because I'm a member. We've come back to re-educate our people about who we are, reorganize our people, not just on an intellectual level, but on a political level. And so we've been having meetings for La Raza Unida Party going back now since 2020, dealing with theory, dealing and practical of what it is to be a party, a people, a revolutionary people. So 2 nights a week, most of us who are Brown Berets are on these meetings on either the Brown Beret study group or La Raza Unida study group. And I believe some good things are about to come from La Raza Unida study group, which is made up of not just Brown Berets and activists, but also scholars. And it doesn't have to be scholars. We also have mechanics, we have artists, we have students, but we don't close the door to anybody. We don't have this space only for the elite. Anybody could join if they accept the principles of what La Raza Unida is, or even with the Brown Berets for that matter. But when we join, it's twice a week on Tuesdays and then Wednesdays. And I would say it's coming along. We have a powerful group out of Tejas or Texas, Southeast Texas, specifically Houston. And San Antonio, we have people out there in Dallas, but it's a Houston group I would give props and credit to that keep this study group going. So thank you all of you in Houston. Que viva La Raza. You're doing a great thing for La Raza.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you guys are doing a great job. You know, this school, I'd like to be able to open the school up to you, any of you, if you want to do, you know, any type of interview yourself with others, or also, you know, if you want to do some political ed or something like that, because the New African Black Panthers, they're doing their political ed with us, and we just need to reach more people. I'd like to be able to reach more people here, you know, in Huntsville, in this area, more Chicanos, and try to form something here. And so maybe that's something that we could, you know, we could work on together. But I mean, this is a tough part of the country, you know. I mean, it's all controlled by the Republicans. So,
Well, we do have brothers out in New York, believe it or not, North Carolina, and they're out there. And individually, people are doing work, and so I wouldn't say that it's not going to happen, but definitely I think more of us, especially now with social media, we're going to make this happen. So
okay,
probably sooner than later.
Okay, Houston has a question.
That's Rodrigo.
How you doing? Hi, Thurman. My name is Rodrigo Villarreal, or Rodrigo Villarreal, and I'm a Brown Beret out of Houston Brown Beret.
Yeah.
Have
you?
I would like to know more about. I probably didn't hear everything, and I've seen you in the Rainbow Coalition thing. But could you please tell me again about the school in Alabama?
Yeah, we organized North Alabama School for Organizers. There's two more people here now who's on our board. That's Eli and Tom. But we organized this, and then there's Joy Johnson, who's from this area, and she's been a big supporter of us. And we started the school because I spent over 50 years in organizing, you know, one way or the other. But we saw a need because we saw so many people who wanted to be organizers or are organizers getting really burned out. And we saw that there's not really a organization around that could get in with the organizations from, say, the Rainbow Coalition or radical organizations. And so we decided we would like to put together a school. Basically, it started here in North Alabama, in which we would get, local, and we still do have local organizations that we do these types of interviews with. But we also have teachers, professional teachers, professors that teach, say the history of the Native American, and we have a class coming up that's going to be the history of 19th and 20th century imperialism. And we just had a number of different courses, but what we want to do is preserve what you folks are doing now and what we're all doing, into our library and on YouTube. So when people want to find out who you are, they can go there, because most people don't know where to go. And so that's what we do. We are, we want to support progressive change, revolutionary change. Most of us are anti-capitalism and revolutionaries. And so we want to be able to join together with all you folks and people and, everyone in the Second Rainbow Coalition and support you, so support what you're doing and you support what we're doing, because that's what the Rainbow Coalition was about. So that's basically it in just a few statements there and what we do.
But like y'all give classes on how to be an effective organizer?
We do. We've had some classes in that. I was teaching a class that I may bring back, which is sustaining organizations and community organizing. And we taught, 18 different roles of an organizer, and people could figure out where they might fit in, because a lot of people were actually in the wrong position. And we talked about forming coalitions. And there are a number of people who went through that class that's still with us today. Tom's one, and Eli's one, and Joy is one. And so that's what we do. We would welcome anybody that wants to teach anything. We do have environmentalism. We teach all kinds of different subjects. We welcome anybody that, say, for instance, if you want to teach a course or you want to do a fireside chat that we're doing now, or anything else. It's your school. It belongs to the people. And so as long as it's not a real, we don't allow any conservative right-wing Republicans or anybody else in here. We try to shy away from the Democratic Party and all that, because those folks don't represent us. Although we have done some work for the Green Party.
But
Okay.
But you say you are anti-capitalist, right? Like,
Yes,
okay.
we're anti-capitalist revolutionaries. Most of us are socialists. That's here.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your for answering my questions.
Yes, sir.
And Tom, hi, I want to share something with you. This is a patch for La Mesa Nacional, and as you can see, it has a red star in the center there, designed by Tecuani out of Los Angeles, one of our members there. And the reason I bring this out is because if you know the history of the Brown Berets, and some of us, as we learn our history, we're shocked to find out that if you're a socialist, if you're communist, or if you were Marxist, some of the original founders did not agree with that ideology. and others did, and they left. They went off to do their own thing because that support just wasn't there. And I showed you a patch right now for La Mesa Nacional because when we organized, we met in East LA in 2018, and we said we have to do something for our people, right? We have to do something serious for our people. As berets, with as many as there is, we have to bring something together. So we had a historic gathering in Houston in 2019, in the summer of 2019, where all these Brown Beret chapters came together from Houston to Chicago to California, you name it. We all came together from all over the country, and we decided we have to do something. What are we going to do? So we agreed on two things. One, uniting Brown Berets under one umbrella if all possible, and two, maintaining the militancy that we have. And there was the first time La Mesa Nacional of Brown Berets Unity came together in Houston. So it was a historic gathering there in Houston. And then we agreed to meet in El Paso. Only after the shootings that happened in El Paso, we said we have to meet there 6 months later, because a year was coming up where we would have the 50th anniversary of what was called the Chicano Moratorium in East LA, where Ruben Salazar, the journalist for the LA Times, who was writing about Chicano, and Raza and what was happening, he was shot. Several people were killed by the sheriff's department while they protested against the Vietnam War. And so we met in El Paso, and we started organizing this thing called La Mesa Today, which is a structure that unites Brown Berets from all over the country. And it wasn't until we got to East LA that we actually, in 2020, where we unveiled our patch, and people were surprised to see that, because for the first time in our history as Brown Berets, we actually managed to unite so many units under one umbrella. And with all social media, with the bickering, with the toxic culture that exists out there, even the cancel culture that exists out there, we said, we got to fight for our people. We ain't got time for this petty stuff. We got to do the serious work as revolutionaries. And this red star is specifically the reason we want people to know that symbolizes our opposition to capitalism, something that was not allowed in the original Brown Berets for many of Berets who wanted to see that happen. So I'm proud of our younger generation that we're standing up and taking and asserting a stronger political line. And that's why we have our study groups on Tuesday and then La Raza Unida study groups on Wednesday.
All right. We've gone through a lot here. Now I want to, there's a couple of questions and they're slipping my mind right now, but how many chapters do you have?
We don't know, to be honest with you. And even if we did, we probably wouldn't publicly say. We keep that to ourselves. But I say we keep getting them. We keep getting them. And under La Mesa, we do have that number. But yeah, chapters for Brown Berets will pop up all over. And if the people are doing the work and they're sincere, we welcome them.
What do you have anything like survival programs going now, food programs, health clinics, anything?
Here in Fresno specifically, and I think Houston has something similar, especially this is important during COVID when it first hit and it struck the world, right? One of the things we have here is a garden. We have a garden where and it had a greenhouse underneath the earth, and it was constructed by Brown Berets, maintained by Brown Berets and college students to feed people, to come grab. They weren't selling the food, to come and grab what they need. And when the pandemic hit, they had eggs there, they had what they needed. And this garden is still in operation today. It's a community garden that serves the people, but it's called Chinampa, and it's a Nahuatl word, and it really means having to do with gardens. And it's nothing that is charged there when people grow there. They also give classes about it, by the way. And I can talk about this firsthand experience here in Fresno because it's a beautiful thing to see. When COVID hits and everybody's rushing to buy up this and buy up that, and they're out of eggs, they had everything they needed there, and they gave away what was needed. My understanding is Houston started something similar, and so have other parts of the country. They've done similar things, including some of our chapters who do survival trainings. Now, specifically in Oregon, and I know here in California, we have different laws in Oregon, so we do survival training as well, different than the other parts of the country. We encourage people to know how to defend themselves, and if they're going to have a firearm, we encourage them to know how to use it and not just foolishly carry it around, because that's negligent on our part to require people to do that. So we say, if you're going to do this, do it right. Some of us have been training and have had training for years in Native American camps and gatherings. Now, there's other people who've also done things such as small, not clinics, but gatherings for having to do during this time of COVID, having to do with first aid, having to do, including, for example, the Chicano Moratorium. We brought people along a medic team, and that was something people didn't expect. We had a whole medic team ready to go for the marchers, for the actives, people who might get dehydrated. So in those instances, we were ready to go. And that's why when you mentioned that we don't close the door on anybody. If you got a skill, you have a skill that our people can benefit from, we invite it. We say, hey, come on, we could use a cook, we could use a nurse, we could use a computer programmer to help us out with some of these things that our people, may not know how to operate or may not know about. So yeah, I think somebody had a question or a comment. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So.
All right. You mentioned defense training.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that's very, very important for us to know. And maybe this is something that we could come together and do, with the Second Rainbow Coalition. I took some gun training in Phoenix with the John Brown Gun Club.
Right on.
And it taught me a lot. Do you have like tests or whatever that people, requirements that people have to, that a member or anyone would have to pass before they could complete a gun course or a defense training?
The different chapters, as I mentioned earlier, they conduct some of these on their own. For example, I mentioned Oregon. They train with the Black Panthers out there and the different African groups, as well as some other groups. But I know that they go through some strict training when it comes to guns, because the gun culture around the country, like you said, is different in different states. California is not as liberal with the gun laws, and although we want people to be, if they can be certified in something, we want them to at least, do it right. And if that means going to a gun course or training with somebody who's going to, give you that, that okay, I would say so, because we trained in a Native American, on Native American land for years. I trained with a lot of people shooting a lot of different types of weapons. But using those weapons, it can be confusing. It can also be scary for some people, right? So we encourage people to at least know which, if you don't want to own a gun, you don't have to own a gun. Because when we talk about self-defense, a gun is one thing, but believe it or not, we could do more damage with these cell phones today and the technology today. If we really put our mind to it, we could, bring down a whole grid. We could bring down a whole satellite. If you look at the power that goes into these computers today and what the capability it possesses, a gun is only secondary. So we encourage people to, yes, self-defense, do self-defense. And here in Fresno, for example, we have a brother who teaches martial arts, and he uses nunchucks and he uses different types of weapons that don't involve bullets, but it's still self-defense. That's important. We need to do that. And when we say self-defense, yes, it's going to involve weapons, and we hope that people are certified and they know when they're handling that gun, what they're doing. But if you're not comfortable with the weapon, such as a gun, we encourage people to learn, physical self-defense, such as boxing. And we do have training. We have brothers and sisters who train in MMA. We have brothers and sisters who train in boxing. Here in Fresno, they meet every Sunday and they train it and hand-to-hand combat, because that's important. And even knives. How do you use a knife? But like I said, I think today with the technology changing, this is a weapon. And as a matter of fact, our study groups, not to get too far away from the quote unquote firearms, but our firearms are also what we got up here. We have to be disciplined, and that's something La Mesa Nacional, as an advisor to La Mesa now, I would say that's one thing we've maintained is discipline and not reacting, not jumping to the first petty thing or reacting to this or that, because unfortunately we get sidetracked. and then somebody knows how to push our buttons. We have to be disciplined, and I would say that's one of the strongest weapons you could have at your side, aside from a gun or a cell phone, is that self-discipline, and be strong to just hang tight, because there'll be times where you'll just be providing and acting as a buffer between law enforcement or the Proud Boys or whoever that's trying to pick a fight with our community who may be marching or conducting an event. And we've been at those events. And I remember when I first met some of the Brown Berets in Houston and in LA, and even in Colorado this past summer, law enforcement shows up. And how do you handle that situation? Because they got guns. And in some cases, we can't walk openly with guns here in California, for example, but they can in other places. And so we have to be disciplined up here to make sure that we don't make a mistake as Brown Berets.
Absolutely, I 100% agree with that. Any fool can own a gun, as we know.
Correct.
And we've seen that happen over and over. Do you have do you ever have any run-ins with ICE? I'm sure you do. But,
Oh, yeah.
You know, and any type of programs that you could talk about, or
Yeah, the Brown Berets, one thing you'll see is that we will volunteer to do marches and do support for different groups. But recently, especially in the last couple of years, starting with Obama, by the way, and it didn't start with Obama, it actually started long before Obama. The Clinton administration was already going after us, but specifically under ICE, when George Bush was president and 9/11 occurred, they created ICE to quote unquote go after terrorists. And ICE, for those who don't know, has been going after immigrants and people who are they consider a threat, and that includes immigrants. So we do have a lot of work that we do with different groups providing security, but there's something more important than, I would say, security, and that's know your rights. A lot of us, including myself, do a lot of know your rights trainings with different groups. And by that, I mean, know your rights when you're confronted by the police. What are your rights? What are you allowed to say and not say? Oftentimes our youth, they don't realize that anything that you do or say, right? Do. People forget the do part, right? The do part can get you in trouble too. That means you enact. You don't have to say anything. So we teach them about knowing your rights, how to protest, how to, if you get in trouble, demand to see a lawyer. If you know something happened, demand to see a lawyer. They got to know those rights, and that has to act as a shield for them. So that same concept applies to our immigrants' rights communities when they're pulled over by ICE. And I was born in Mexico, like I mentioned. I was considered quote unquote illegal by the system for years. So I remember what it felt like to have to hide from the immigration back in the day. And then when it became ICE, now I know exactly, what to tell people, what not to say, because I went through that. And having a law degree, I won't give out legal advice, but I will, guide my brothers and sisters in the Brown Berets and the community and what we need to do when confronted by ICE. Unfortunately, a lot of our people, we respect authority. Our grandmothers and grandfathers, our young brothers and sisters, and our parents, and sometimes they'll speak to ICE, they'll talk to ICE when probably they shouldn't have. Sometimes something will be revealed, they'll open the door when maybe they shouldn't have. But a lot of people don't know this, or like I said, we respect authority, and unfortunately ICE has taken advantage of that. So we have know your rights amongst different Brown Berets, and those of us who do know how to do this, provide this service to them. Matter of fact, I'll be in Houston February 4th, and Houston is doing something big out there with the Trudy Guadalupe Hidalgo, the anniversary coming up. They're going to have a serious day of gathering there, where if I'm fortunate enough, I'd like to do a know your rights there as well, because like I said, when you go to college, these college degrees mean nothing if you don't do something constructive with them. And so that's what I've been doing with my law degree the last couple of years.
do you have, well, what we're putting together with the Second Rainbow Coalition and is a legal team. I'm talking to lawyers now and trying to get them aboard. Maybe it's something you could work with us.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead, because what we want to do is to make sure that if the time comes, we have legal defense, and that's very necessary, because it's going to come. It's going to come to any organization that's fighting against this imperialist system.
Yep.
So we're doing that. Do you have that type of a committee or group or?
We have a network that we in the West Coast primarily work with called the National Lawyers Guild. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them.
Okay. Yeah.
Oftentimes you'll see them with the little green caps. I don't know if they're out there as much in the East Coast as they are here, but they're really helpful. And that's my go-to because they're really young activist lawyers, and some of them are older activist lawyers who know the importance of having a legal eye on what's happening. So that's been our go-to. But in terms of something specifically for the Second Rainbow Coalition, I agree. I think there has to be some sort of wing to make sure that we study what we can and can do, right? And that includes also doing the Know Your Rights if possible, because I know the Second Rainbow Coalition just got off a couple years ago to start where you've got different committees, but definitely some sort of legal committee would definitely be helpful.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what we're going to be organizing, and I'd love for you to be a part of it if you could. You know,
Right on.
we can all work together on that. We do have other lawyers that we're recruiting now. And so let's see what time it is. It's 7:53. We generally go to 8. Any other questions from anyone?
Anybody out there from Brown Berets logged on might have a question or statement? And we got some great people by on tonight. Don Alcin,
Yeah.
we got JP out of Sacramento, real instrumental with La Mesa. Obviously, you met Hashid earlier. We got Vida Ramirez, as I mentioned, and all these members are all active. We got Hennessy out here in Texas as well, and Coco in Indiana. So we got a good group out here. Let me see, Houston, I'd like to see that. Yeah, Houston, like to see a Know Your Rights as well. Anybody have a question out there? Since you're online. Or a statement, it's up to you.
Let's see, housekeeping items.
I have a statement. I think it would be wonderful to see a NASO class on knowing your rights. You know, it's something a lot of people don't understand. And I think I need a refresher every like 6 months or so. But, you know, that way we put it out on YouTube and it'd be available to anyone.
Yeah, Tom, you bring up a good point because people sometimes forget that you have public property, you've got private property, and then something in between. And it's and people get lost in that when they were protesting, when we're marching, right? We might even get ourselves in trouble. So I know that's a big part of know your rights, know your territory, where you're at, which you can do. Also, young people here in California, for example, I know that the young people, they all over the country are pulling out their cell phones. Sometimes they themselves don't realize that evidence that they're trying to use to save their buddy, they end up incriminating either themselves or their friends because now they've said something. So simple things as know how to record the police, know what's going to happen if you step out of this area, because the police will use any little detail to arrest you, to knock you down. I know Hashid, who's on the call, he got tried. He got arrested for filming the police, and they took his camera from him. So that was the firsthand experience here in Fresno. When we first started, we said, nah, this ain't never going to happen again. And hasn't yet since, by the way. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and that's why the Black Panthers were so effective, because they knew the law.
Correct.
You know? And they could call them on the law. So that was very important. Well, it's certainly an honor to have you here, Raphael, and everyone here to work with. I definitely want to continue working with all you folks, and like Tom was saying, it would be great to have you here and others to do some of those, of course, on your legal rights, because people really need it. And I think we could get quite a few people for that in here for that. And it's just, well, an honor having you here. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Hi, and thank you, Tom, for inviting us. I think the Brown Berets, I keep saying that younger generation of Brown Berets has really got a lot going, and they're going to be making some change. I wasn't sure if, after graduating from high school, when I first, became aware of the Brown Berets, that the Brown Berets were still going to continue to be out there doing things. But you know what? This younger generation has really stepped up, and they're taking it to a different level, a whole new level. And I can say I'm proud to be a member of the Brown Berets with everybody on here. Proud to be a member of La Mesa Nacional de Brown Berets. And whether it's Los Brown Berets with Sergio Lujan or it's Connie Gonzalez or whoever may be, Edward, out of San Diego, you've got so many Brown Beret leaders throughout the country who are doing things, but we also recognize the importance of connecting with other groups, including the new African Black Panther Party and Kwame, for example, who's reached out to us to partner up with yourselves and some of the original founders of the original, Rainbow Coalition, because Aztlan, as I mentioned, is an important location and it's continued to grow. And I think the heart of Aztlan is all over now, these 50 states. And it's oftentimes led by Brown Berets. Somebody with the Brown Berets knows what I'm talking about. So thank you for inviting us.
Well, thank you so much. And we definitely want to get you back here again and have you to, take part in the school. It belongs to everybody.
Right on.
Appreciate it. And thank all you folks for all the hard work and, you're doing, and it's really appreciated. And power to people.
Power to the people y viva la raza.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
thank
Good
you.
night, folks.
Y viva la causa.
Que viva.
Fireside Chats is a production of North Alabama School for Organizers. NASO seeks to empower communities through intersectional education and training. More information, including upcoming classes, at naso.network. Thank you for joining us for Fireside Chats.